risk minimization activities to be implemented in South Africa. So this is in addition to what I highlighted earlier, but we had the very same question speaking to the epidemiology issues, and we are still not in agreement to say if available. So the guideline would still come as we initially indicated. Then acceptable RMP format still continues where an existing EU or RRA RMP submitted together with an SA-specific annexure. The annexure should identify any difference between the EU and the other RMP or the foreign RMP in this case, and the local implementation of the risk management activities, that is routine and additional pharmacovigilance or risk minimization measure. So it's important for us to see the difference in terms of what has been proposed for, or what will be implemented rather, in the other countries compared to what you will be proposing for South Africa. So we gave an example there to say the difference between the EU summary of product characterization and the South African approved PI, and the reasons for the difference should be provided as well, as this will allow the authority to assess the appropriateness of the proposed RMP in the SA environment. Then secondly, to allow the authority to assess the appropriateness and value of planned pharmacovigilance or risk minimization measures, the following details should be provided. Study protocols or current drafts of all studies referred to in the pharmacovigilance or risk minimization plans, including the aims, the methodology, limitations, and practical applications, plans for any proposed communication or education program, including aims, methods, evaluation, or monitoring of effectiveness, timelines for the provision of the relevant documents, timelines for planned activities, and for instance, estimated date and proposed dates for planned studies. My apologies, I forgot to put the close bracket. Monitoring and or evaluation plans to assess the effectiveness of any pharmacovigilance or risk minimization interventions. So all this information would be requested. It should be included rather when you are submitting. All attachments, annexes, and appendices referred to in the RMP, they must be provided in full as well, so that it will make it easier and much more understandable for us to review what has been submitted and to inform regulatory decision making in relation to the submitted RMP or the SASA. So now we're going to look at the SASA, and then SASA is more specific to South Africa, hence our microscope looking more closer into South African issues. So what is the purpose of the SASA? So the purpose of the SASA is to provide SA-specific information. I've touched on it as I've been presenting from other sections, but now we're paying particular attention to SASA itself. So it provides SA-specific information that is important in assessing and managing risk locally, and to determine the appropriateness of proposed plans or activities and their relevance, and the relevance rather of pharmacovigilance and the risk management activities to be implemented in South Africa. So we want to see how relevant are your proposed plans or activities in South Africa. Are they going to address the risk that have been identified locally? So that's basically the purpose. Secondly, to identify and explain the reasons for any differences on activities planned in other countries versus what you are planning to implement in South Africa. Thirdly, to address the applicability of the global activities to the SA environment if no specific SA data is planned. So we have received requests from industry to say, can you kindly develop a SASA template? So follow on to those requests. SAHPRA has therefore developed the SASA template. that we have put in place. I know we haven't shared the SAHPRA with the applicant. However, with the next version that will be published, we will be attaching the SAHPRA templates to be followed. So the SAHPRA should provide the SA registration history, including registration numbers where appropriate, the pertinence dates, like if there's been any amendments, medicine usage data, current and previous application types as depicted in module 1.2.1. So it's more about the history of that particular product. The SAHPRA should include a summary of previously submitted and approved, withdrawn or rejected SAHPRA applications, a summary of any submissions currently under evaluations, a table comparing the approved and or proposed indications in South Africa and other regulators that SAHPRA aligns itself with, identifying and explain the reasons for any differences, a tabulated history of all RMPs submitted in SA pertaining to the product, with summary of changes between the versions. They should be provided. Then in terms of the epidemiology, SAHPRA should provide SA-specific epidemiological information on the population to be treated, regarding the size of the target population or any specific data that is relevant to assessing potential use of the medicine in South Africa. I know this is a thorn issue that I'm quite sure we're going to receive quite a number of questions on it. However, we are open for discussion. For each indication, data is required on incidence and prevalence of the condition, demographics of the target population, risk factors for the condition, current treatment option, and estimates of mortality and morbidity. So this is the kind of information that we would request. And then in terms of the pharmacovigilance plan, the applicant or HR must confirm that local PV activities will be conducted in accordance with the current SAHPRA guideline. Routine PV activities to be carried out in SA should be described. Justification for not implementing any routine activities included in the EU or any other RRA RMP in South Africa will be required. Where appropriate, details of procedures that will enable the traceability of biological products, allowing for investigation of possible disease transmission between the donor and the recipient are to be described in any biovigilance system to be implemented in South Africa. When a safety concern specific to SA is identified, an additional PV or risk minimization activities are proposed beyond those included in the EU or other RRA RMP. Justification for the additional safety concern must be provided. If the pharmacovigilance plan for the specific safety concern includes additional activities, then details must be provided as well. So in terms of the studies referenced in the pharmacovigilance plan, any differences between the additional studies listed elsewhere and those proposed for SA must be justified and tabulated. So if you can look at the SAHPRA, it requires that where there's any differences between elsewhere and SA, you need to provide justification. Why are you deviating? So that's very important for us to understand the reason why something would be more applicable elsewhere, not in South Africa, or more applicable in South Africa and not elsewhere. So justification becomes the core or the most important thing when putting the SAHPRA together if there's any differences. So where SA data is to be collected in relation to PV study outlined in the RMP or foreign RMP, or any SA-specific study is proposed, then the draft protocols for the studies must be provided. The anticipated dates for submission of study results in SA must be tabulated as well. So the risk minimization activities for generic medicines. So in circumstances where risk minimization activities are required for generics, so the RMP should describe the proposed additional risk minimization activities for generics and justify any differences with the existing additional risk minimization activities for the originator. So earlier on, I've indicated that in an instance where you anticipate that a generic medicine would actually pose more of maybe medication error issues or misuse, then you need to submit an RMP. So these are some of the additional information that you'll be providing, why maybe your RMP would be different, and then you provide the reasons thereof. Additional risk minimization materials for generic medicine should cover the same key safety messages as those for the originator medicine, and any safety concerns specific to the generic. Then SA-specific information, if available, on the potential for medication errors or other risk, should be provided. Details about how and when evaluation of additional risk minimization activities, including educational activities, will be undertaken in SA and reported to the authority, should be provided. How the measures used to mitigate the risk are expected to work, and what actions will be taken to ensure product effectiveness. If the risk mitigation measures do not work, it needs to be detailed as well. So I've come to almost the end of my presentation. One of the things that we highlighted as part of the sections of the RMP that should be submitted as per the EU format that I highlighted earlier is the summary of the RMP. And this is the core, because from the questions that we received, one of the questions was to say, how would we get to know about the safety issues that the innovator, as a generic company, how would we get to know what safety plans and activities have been implemented by the innovator? And this question is now being answered by the summary of the RMP. So the RMP summary, it's basically used to summarize the information contained in the full RMP and is intended for healthcare professionals and third parties seeking information. So it's a supplement to the publicly available medicine product information, such as your patient information leaflet, or what is currently available on the SAHPRA website, the professional information. So it will just be an add-on. So it should be submitted for all initial applications of innovator medicines, or all those ones that I said that are submitted as new application for innovators, examples, biosimilars, new biological applications, and all post-authorization RMP updates. So it's not only the initial ones only, but as well as any updates to the RMP. So they should be submitted to SAHPRA as a standalone document with cover letter with the same format via the ECTD or the e-submission, and should follow the EMA format of the summary of the risk management plan, where it speaks to the background, a bit of background about the product itself, as well as the important identified risk, the potential risk, the missing information, the risk minimization measures, if I'm remembering the format correctly. But the EMA format is there. We can include it as well in the guidelines so that it makes it easier for people to know. But I know most of the innovators will know what I'm talking about. Then what's important to note is that SAHPRA will publish the RMP summary of the final approved RMP on the SAHPRA website. And through the publication of the RMP summary on the SAHPRA website, this will then enable the generic companies and any other third party, like we said in the initial statement, to have a view of the safety concerns that have been identified and what risk minimization measures have been put in place. So I hope I've answered one of the questions from the previous questions that we received. So just to add on, we have decided to include the roles and responsibilities of the holder of certificate of registrations. So as the holder of certificate of registration or applicants, you are mandated to appoint a QPPV or a local PV officer, and it is their responsibility then to ensure the development of the RMP or the SASA, update the RMP as new information, safety information emerges to reflect the new knowledge and understanding of the medicine's safety profile and benefit risk balance, implementing the activities and intervention outlined in the RMP, collecting information and performing any analysis regarding the efficacy and of these activities and interventions, and communicating um, the information to the authority in a timely manner. Okay, I think number D must actually talk to the efficiency rather than efficacy. My apologies when I read it. The efficiency of these activities and interventions and communicating this information to the authority in a timely manner. So we expect this to be as part of maybe the responsibilities of the QPPV. But this is what the HCR or the applicants, they need to ensure that it's in place. This is my last slide. Thank you so much for listening. Then you've got your nice 2 hours of asking questions. But I really appreciate you listening and being part of this. Mr. Matoti, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mafurara, for what I could term a very good presentation. That because on itself, it also addresses some of the burning issues that the colleagues or stakeholders have already addressed, and your presentation also made an attempt to address some of those queries. And again, thank you for the well presentation. I think having completed that part where Mafura was sharing with us the basis and the reasons behind the development of the risk management plan and the development of the SASA, as she has indicated that that is going to be shared with our stakeholders when we publish the final draft of the risk management plan. I'm going to ask my co-facilitator, Ms. Dlamini here, to also assist with I think the first round of questions, we're going to look at the ones that are on the chat before we could allow the colleagues to raise their hands and ask other specific questions. We going to go in the order of the question that has been posted on the chat, and I'm also going to ask the colleagues from SAHPRA to assist in responding to this. And maybe before I dive into the questions, I don't know if Ms. Chetty and also Ms. Sobran can now hear me, as we missed an opportunity to introduce them earlier, including Melanie, our communication specialist. Ms. Chetty, thanks, Prativa.
Thanks, Kamusi. Thanks, Mafora. That was a great presentation. Happy to meet everyone. I've just joined as Senior Manager for HPA. And looking forward to the road ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Prativa. Santani, are you?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I can't put my camera on, but you won't see anything because I've got too much of light behind me.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so I'm a manager from HPA, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. We also have some of our colleagues who have joined, but unfortunately, because they've joined from the other platform, and because of they are unable to speak. But I suppose they will come in when there are the specific questions that they need to be addressed. If we just go quickly on the question that has been posed to us on the chat, I think if we start with the first one, that let me quickly just go the list. I think the one that I can see, it says it will also be highly appreciated if SAHPRA can also conduct a session on measuring the effectiveness of the risk minimization measures. I think that's just a comment for the colleague from SAHPRA. There's a question on the ECTD format for RMP for the local PV. The colleague submission said it's currently via an email. Can you clarify if it is understood that the local regulatory colleagues are the ones with access to the ECTD submission? Santano Mafura, or colleagues, do you have an input on this question that talks to the ECTD as it is posed?
Thank you, Kamusi. I think Santani maybe can assist with regards to the ECTD submissions. I'm not so privy to that, but I see Luleka as well maybe wants to come in.
Okay, Luleka can go ahead.
No, Santani, sorry, I muted by mistake.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Kamusi. I think maybe I can assist in this regard. So if the RMP is expected to be in ECTD format, then it must be submitted as a follow-up sequence if it's for a generic. And with regards to the transitioning to the new service provider as well, there were documents shared on the ECTD submission portal. And what has changed is that previously the RMPs were submitted in module 1.13, and now it has moved to module 1.8.2. So in the ECTD format, you would then submit the RMP in that module. And I think for the new applications, it would be in sequence, in the initial sequence, and then for generics in a follow-up sequence. Thank you.
Thank you, Santani. Thank you, truly appreciate it. I think the next one said, should the RMP summary be submitted together with SASA? And is RMP summary submitted on request from SAHPRA? Mafura, Ahlodi, Luleka, do you want to take this one? Should the RMP summary be submitted together with the SASA?
Okay, thank you, Kamasi. Maybe I need to provide a bit of details with regards to the SASA and the RMP summary. So the SASA is actually an addendum to the EU RMP. So when you submit your initial EU or foreign RMP, then it needs to come together with the SASA, because then it's going to explain the difference between the foreign RMP and the local, and how you're going to address the local issues, providing the justifications where there's any differences. So they need to go together, the SASA and the foreign RMP. And then thirdly, what needs to be submitted as well, which is what I think I highlighted, is the fact that there's a need for a summary of RMP. We don't need to be asking for it, but it needs to be as part of the submission as well. So I think I've summarized that. If there's a need for us to amend or anything, we will communicate in terms of recommendations to the applicant to say, in view of maybe the approved summary, RMP rather, then the summary needs to be amended as follows. And then the applicant needs to accede or amend before we can publish because we need to publish a document that is coming from the applicant themselves. Thanks. I hope I've clarified that.
Thanks, Mafura. And indeed, if there's further clarity, we'll get that when we ask colleagues to raise their hands. And we, the next one is, if the safety consent mentioned in the summary of the innovator RMP that probably will be available on the website, it's not consistent to the safety consents available in the latest CMDH safety consent list published by IMA. In this scenario, the generic applicant shall refer which one while preparing the South African RMP? Mafura?
That's an interesting one.
Mahlodi? Mahlodi? I think Mahlodi and Luleka, do you want to address this one?
Okay, I will attempt, but I think it's something that we may need to go and consider. At this point in time, our view was based on the currently approved RMP safety consents rather than the EU, but it's something that we are very much willing to go and consider how we can ensure that we are aligned with other regulatory authorities that maybe we refer to them. So Kamusi, please, let's take note of that particular question. I think it's important, and then we can provide a response to the applicants. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Mafura. And indeed, we'll take it back for further discussion. Okay, I think the next one, it says, where on the SAHPRA website will this RMP of the innovator be, or will that still be data mine or news or e-library or e-service? Probably rather safety information and updates. I would think that this one is asking specifically on the platform where we're going to make the RMP available. I think Mafura, or have we really made the determinations on the platform already?
Not as yet. So maybe it's something that we can include in the guideline. Melanie, I hope you're taking note of that. So our communications department will assist in terms of the platform, where exactly you're gonna put it. So we'll communicate it in the guideline.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Melanie. The next one is, please clarify, does the applicant have to include the RMP in the new sequence to SAHPRA as well as, or only as a standalone document with the cover letter via the ECTD format?
I think this one, Santani has already attended to, Kamusi.
Okay. All right. I think the SASA one, Mafura, you've already addressed it. The next one is for post-registration experience for South Africa. Will summary of the adverse events reported for South Africa fulfill this requirement? And this is specifically for post-reg. Mahlodi and Luleka. The question
It's
is
for Flora still, because because they're going to be reviewing this adverse event.
okay. All right. They're saying, Flora, the question says for post-registration experience for South Africa.
Yes.
Yeah. Will
After the
summary of
product
the
is
advance?
registered.
Yes. After, yeah. So do you want to take that, Mafura?
Please say that again, Kamusi.
Okay. For post-registration experience for South Africa, will summary of the adverse event reported for South Africa fulfill this requirement?
I think to a certain extent, yes, it should, because it's part of the post-registration experience. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and the periodic safety updates, I suppose that will also assist. Okay.
Yes, that's why I'm saying partly, because it will be in addition to other activities, like
Okay.
the amendments that you're speaking to.
Okay. I think this one you have addressed it, I think, but I'm just gonna quick try and read it. So you, Mafora, if you have not really addressed it, you can also further expand on it. It says, if, for example, our RMP is from a non-RRA slash EU, should we then compile a complete RMP for South Africa? As per the text, the annexure is only for RRA RMP submission, or am I not understanding this correctly? I think this is just a question. It's referring specifically to um, the product that comes from a country that is not the RRA or EU. The question is, should they compile the RMP for South Africa and not necessarily go the route of the annexure? I don't know if that is clear, Mafura.
I think you must answer that one.
Okay. Yes. The answer is yes. You should compile the RMP for South Africa. I think Mafura, on your presentation you also address these specific questions. Okay. Thanks, Flora. Um,
I think underneath that one, there's also a question, Kamusi, that says, how will a company producing a generic drug know about actions at the originator level? Will this be upon request by SAHPRA? Will the originator RMP be available to ensure alignment on a RMM?
okay. Thanks, Luleka. Mafura, I think this one you did touch on it, because you said the information that will publish the summary of the RMP should be able to or assist, right, the generic applicant, right? Did I get it right?
Yes.
Yes, the summary should be able to provide the relevant information to assist the generic manufacturer to get the relevant guidance in terms of the issues that would have been identified as the risk for the product used in the country. Um, um, Duleka, do you want to take this one, the next one? Uh, May
May
SAHPRA, yeah,
SAHPRA
yes, please
May
proceed.
SAHPRA please guide us on what is required in the declaration? Will SAHPRA provide a template to industry?
No, we won't be providing a template. But a declaration, basically, it speaks about the information that you have provided to us, that it's true, and so I don't know if maybe colleagues, we want to put wording together that we want to communicate, but I don't think we need a standardized format to say this is what you're supposed to say, but you need to declare that the information that you're providing is true reflection of maybe all the information that you have gathered to support this submission. Yeah, people can add. I don't have a specific information that I would say add, but you need to declare that that is true what you are providing to us. It's not something that you're just sucking. Kamusa, I saw your mic flagging. Maybe you want to add.
No, that's fine, Flora. You have addressed it. I think I was flaking because I was reading the next question already. Okay. I think you have dealt with it. The next one, it says, this is again a question on the RMP, review comments from foreign health authorities. This information is strictly confidential for some companies and is not available. Only the final approved RMP, I suppose, that says it will be available. Please confirm that this will not be required in this situation, as this is not feasible. Yeah, maybe it's not that clear, but I thought this issue we have already addressed, Mafora, when we're addressing the published summary of the approved RMP by SAHPRA.
Yeah, but then they say it's confidential in certain companies. I think that's the issue that they want to address, to say if they say it's confidential, therefore we would not say we require it. But I think it's very clear in the guideline to say where you have them, provide them. I'm not sure, maybe the person can raise their hand and then expatiate on the confidentiality issues, because the RMP, we're trying to align internationally in terms of the requirements, in terms of ensuring public safety. Why would it be something that's confident? Maybe there's something that I'm not understanding.
Okay. Yes, Aluleke, just note that Olumese piece will be the first one as we take the questions after the last, I think, left with probably 3 questions that I must read to clarify on this specific one. Is there a document available regarding standard, routine, additional risk minimization activities per substance?
Not that I'm aware of. However, we are working on a document that speaks to risk minimization measures. So it will not be per molecule, but it will be risk minimization measures in general. We're trying to align with what IMA has. So if you want to have more information with regards to that, you can just Google it. It's available on the IMA website. It talks to risk minimization measures. It's not per molecule though, unless if maybe other colleagues, they are aware of it. Then they can highlight maybe in the chat so that we can assist each other.
Okay. Thanks, Mafura. I think the last question we're taking from the Q&A, suppose that talks to Mahlori. Mahlori, the question says, can you please clarify clinical data for generics? Does this exclude or include the BE studies in the support of safety and efficacy?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I was actually even typing the answer in the comment.
Okay.
Thanks, Kamusi. Karen, I think for this, it does not exclude generics, whether they need BE or B studies or not. In this case, the RMP, it will be based on an API. If in that API, when we reviewed the NCE, we had determined that there's some risk minimization that needs to be followed up, that will by default fall into the generic, irrespective of whether it's a generic with clinical data or just a generic with BE studies. I hope I've answered you.
Thanks. Indeed, can indicate.
And there are more questions, Kamusi, on the chat, on the Q&A. So this question says, given that we've already started with dossier planning for NCEs for the next 6 months, and that we will be providing RRA, RNP, what are the timelines for implementation of the SASA as part of the dossier? Or could we expect a query to provide the SASA during the evaluation process?
Hey, Mafura, do you want to take that?
No, I don't want to take it. The reviewers must take this one. No.
Mahlodi, do you want to take it for NCEs?
Okay. Luleka, just read it for me again. We should be able to respond.
Given that we have already started with dossier planning for NCEs for the next 6 months and that we will be providing RRA, RMP, what are the timelines for implementation of the SASA as part of the dossier? Or could we expect a query to provide the SASA during the evaluation process?
Okay, can I take the first part, maybe, Kamusi?
Okay, yeah.
Regarding the implementation of the SASA. So maybe I'm actually going to answer the whole question. The idea is that we're going to publish the guideline, including the SASA, post this meeting, maybe in a week or so. And then that will be for implementation because, as you may be aware, this has been ongoing for some time. So this will be for implementation. So as to Kamusi and Mahlodi, you're going to request the SASA on an immediate basis, or you want to say, I've seen with post in clinical rather, where they say it can come as a condition of registration. I don't know if that's how you want to address it, or you'd have a different mechanism. Let me leave it to you to answer that portion.
Thanks, Mafura. Mahlodi, Mafura is pushing back to us. But if I respond specifically for biological medicines, I think the approach has always been for all the new application for biological medicines, be it a new biopharmaceuticals or vaccines or a biosimilar. We have always been requesting the SASA. Mafura. So we had already implemented, although the guideline was not effective as in yet. And I think this is because of the product risk that we're dealing with. So that has been an approach. And I think the question is whether we will allow the applicant to respond. I think together when they're addressing the queries that would have been raised by SAHPRA, yes, I think that's the approach that the SAHPRA will take, Mafura. And I suppose that would be the same for the NCEs for orthodox.
Okay, thanks, Kamusi. The next question is, so the submission will be made by local regulatory. This is because the local PV does not have access to ECTD submission platform as explained. This access is with local regulatory colleagues, or will local PV contact be required to have access to the ECTD submission platform? Which I believe it's rather an operational issue. I don't know if Santani and Flo, you want to take this one.
I think Santani.
Not sure. Sorry, I need to just apply my mind. Let me think about that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we will discuss this internally, and we will provide the guidance from our side. The next question is, do you submit for generic new application the RMP and SASA?
So in terms of the generic, if they have, okay, for the generics, because they will not have the global RMP, then they will need to develop a South African specific RMP. So they will not need the SASA. So the SASA comes only as an addendum to a foreign RMP to the RRA. That's the only time that we require a SASA. If you have an EU RMP that you want to submit to SAHPRA, that's acceptable, but it must be accompanied by a SASA so that we understand how is it translating to the South African local market. But then if you are developing an RMP for South Africa, there's no way you can have both. So you will only develop a South African RMP.
Thank you, Flo. The next question is, when will the final version be published? Only after the final version should we comply to this guideline.
So as indicated at the moment, actually this on the website says for implementation. So since there was a request to say, can we first have a workshop to understand where we stand with this? So as soon as we publish, it will be for implementation, including the SASA. And then if there are any queries pertaining to the SASA, we will amend as we go. But it will be for implementation. It will not be for later implementation. No, we will continue with the implementation, just an updated version. And we're hoping that hopefully by the end of this month, we should have uploaded this, and then applicants, they have a preview of the updated version.
Alrighty, thank you. And the next one says, please confirm where the RMP summary will need to be included in the ECTD.
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, ECTD is not my strong point. Santani, are you able to assist? Where can we plug it in? Will it still be under the RMP section? Is it something that we need to go back and reconsider and communicate?
Yeah, I think since the PV information is in 1.8, and if the summary is part of the RMP and we're moving all RMP information to 1.82, should it not be included there? Because I think then, all the PV information is in the one module.
Yes,
That I think would
that's
be the ideal place to include it.
yes. Thanks, Santani. That should be the ideal place where the summaries should be included. As we're done with the review of the RMP, we're also looking at the summaries within the same section.
So I think it's important for us then to highlight it in the guideline where the summary should be. Sasani, please note.
Okay.
There's still questions. I don't know if you still see them.
I see. The Mahlodi, the clone. I think Mahlodi probably Santani. For the clone medicines, where there is a innovator brand and a clone / generic brand in South Africa, in the South African market by the innovator company with the same indication, will the submission of the RMP for the innovator brand be sufficient for the clone brand as well? Mahlodi and Santani, please.
Yes, I think a little bit, but I will defer it back to Santani because my understanding is that the applicant will not be submitting a new dossier. So it will be an additional sequence. Am I correct, Santani?
That's correct, Mahlodi. So the clone, by virtue of its definition, is identical to the innovator product. And whatever applies to the innovator will apply to the clone. So I think in this instance, the RMP for the innovator will also apply to the clone. And you're quite correct, Mahlodi, that the clone application becomes part of the innovator dossier, except that it is, when you submit the clone, that clone sequence will just have the clone name and the clone number. Everything else will be identical. So definitely the RMP would then apply to the clone brand as well. Thank you.
I think the summary has already been addressed. I think the next one, Flora, which you probably addressed it already, is there a requirement to also provide global epidemiology data or only ZA epidemiology data? If there is no ZA epidemiology data available, is it acceptable to just state this or provide? Yeah, that's the question, Mafora.
So, yeah, it's a little bit tricky, Kamusi. You can also respond. But in terms of the epidemiological data, we are very specific to South African data. But in instances where maybe the only data that you find to be available is the global data, you will need to maybe talk to how does it translate to the South African context. And then if you say it's not available at all, you would need to provide some kind of evidence to say this is how far I have went and I could not find anything, which I think it's impossible. So like I indicated, the epidemiological data will be handled in a case by case situation. But the request is for the SA epidemiological data. Kamusi, I think you can add. This will be more relevant to you, actually. Thanks.
Uh, yeah, I think Flora, you have should I say partially? I think yeah, probably addressed that question, because I think on your presentation you have also highlighted that the risk management plan must also look at what's your plan, looking at the burden of diseases in the South African context, and if that justifications and the planning is submitted, I suppose as reviewers that's what we'll look at. And if there are any specific questions that we'll want to address, I suppose that's also what we'll communicate for further clarity from the applicants or the manufacturer. Think the next one is on the timelines. I think that Mafura, you've already addressed that immediately after this meeting we'll be publishing the guidelines, and of course publication will also indicate effective dates. Um, uh, okay, I think there was the question first that we need. I think Takoza, if you could allow, is it sorry, I think is it Olumesepis wanted to expand on the question that was also on the chat before we go to non-domestic first.
Okay, Olumisa, you can continue. Thanks.
Yeah, so it's respective to the foreign reviews. What I was talking about was the comments from the health authorities during the process of review of the RMPs. That is not available, it's confidential, but when it has been approved, the summary and what has been approved, that is available. So that's what I wanted to clarify.
So, if I understand you correctly, you're saying you will be able to provide the approved rather than the back and forth between the regulator and the applicant.
Exactly. Yes, correct.
I think that should be acceptable.
Okay, thank you.
Co-chair Luleka, any other questions that we need to get through to? Probably maybe 3 more.
Yeah, I think it's well, the others I think Flora has already attended to, because it talks to the effectiveness of the guideline.
Okay. I think
Okay, here's another question. Will it be sufficient to provide the literature search query strategy and results as evidence for very limited local epidemiology data being available for South Africa? This approach was utilized for one of the RMPs submitted.
Like I said, we will handle this case by case because we cannot standardize that the literature can be just used. And then people can opt for just going to the literature and not necessarily getting what is required. So on a case-by-case situation, definitely we're going to see whether this is relevant, is something that we can accept. Hence, you say it was used in one submission. So we will consider on a case-by-case. Kamasi, you want to add?
No. Look, I think, Mafura, as you have already addressed, this will be on a case-to-case basis, and including the information that will be requested for the applicants to clarify it. That will be on the case-to-case basis also. I think the next one is Mashodi. This is for you, I suppose. And for generic submissions, the RMP is not required unless specifically requested by SAHPRA. We would like to know if this will occur during the pre-reg evaluation or at the time of registration.
Thanks. I think that normally you would know it. I know that internally we're trying to come up with mechanisms or maybe a list that we will share that will guide generic applicants, especially before they submit for which APIs we would need an RMP going forward. So this is something that we're still discussing in-house. But then generally when we send out query letters, we will indicate on your query letter to say, we request that you submit an RMP. And in some cases, we would also put it as a condition of registration to say we need an RMP for this API.
Okay. Thanks, Matlodi. The next one says, if we submit SASA and the EU RMP, and there are no changes to the EU RMP, do we need to update the SASA and submit, even if the changes are not aligned with the conditions laid out in the 3.1.2, or will this only be required upon request?
Kamusi, please repeat that.
If we submit a SASA, South African specific annexure, and EU RMP, and there are no changes to the EU RMP, do we need to update the SASA and submit, even if the changes are not aligned with the conditions laid out in 3.1.2, or will these only be required upon request?
I'm not sure if I'm clearly understanding.
I must also confess, there's a, I think,
Do we mind to unmute the person?
I think Shirinda,
Yes, just
Shirinda
to
must.
be clear, so that we can provide correct responses.
Yes, because I thought the South African annexure, it's meant to address issues that are specific to South Africa, right? And I
Yes.
think on your presentation, you have also highlighted that should there be differences between the EU, or if there are any changes, that's where probably in the tabulated format on the summary, you'll indicate and provide relevant justification on why the two are not aligned. I thought that's what you addressed, Mafura, on your presentation.
Yes, yes.
Yes, can I come in? I think it was the not part that was added. So the questions are raised if we submit a SASA and the EU RMP, and there are changes to the EU RMP, and then we've already submitted based on that. So do we need to then submit or maybe update the SASA and then and submit if there are changes are not aligning on the condition? So I would definitely agree with you that the SASA is meant to address the changes, but then let's say at the time of the submissions, right? There was no, like maybe no changes in the EU RMP, but then later on the EU RMP changes, and then there are discrepancies, or they are like no, they are not aligned with the SASA, right? And then does it mean that we then have to update the SASA and then submit again, or it will be upon request?
Okay, I think now it's clear. So it's more about the changes that takes place post-registration to align, whether to align the SASA with the changes from the foreign RMP or not. So the answer is yes, you will need to update the SASA and inform us. Remember, with each and every update to the RMP, the regulator needs to be made aware. So if it affects the SASA, you'll also submit an updated SASA and highlight the changes. I think somewhere I've covered this, but it was not under the SASA portion, it was under the RMP itself, where we indicate that with each and every amendment, you need to inform the regulator with the versions at the date and everything. So the same will be applicable for the SASA, because it wouldn't make sense for us to have a SASA that is not in line with the EU RMP. So we will need to see the difference still, which part have been amended, how does it affect the SASA, and then how does it then translate to the to addressing the local safety issues.
Thanks, Mafura. I don't know if Luleka, I can just note the last question before, so that we don't miss out. I think there was a question. There was a hand from I think non-Dumiso, before we could take probably a body break. I don't know if it's, yeah, I think you can go ahead, non-Dumiso. Then I think after we address your question, we probably will have to take a body break for a few minutes. See if I can unmute.
Are we still reading from the chat, or we are allowing them?
I wanted to we allow non-Dumiso because she had her hand up to go, and then we will take a body break, and then after the break we'll continue with questions. Let's see if we can allow. Dokozo, can you just allow non-Dumiso, please?
She has access. She can just unmute and
Okay. I don't know if she can hear us, but if not, Mafura, are you okay with the 10 minutes body break?
I'll be happy, thank you.
Okay. I think let's come back at 10:50. So that's about 30 minutes, colleagues. If that's okay, we've noted I think Olumese, Non-Dumiso, and Shirinza's hands. I don't know if Shirinza is it Eliga's hand? And then
Yeah, I had. Sorry,
okay.
I had posted questions on the chat as
Okay,
well.
we will attend to you immediately after the body break, and also yeah, it's fine. Let's take a break, colleagues. Just a few minutes. Let us all be back here at 10:50. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning again, colleagues. I think we are exactly at 10:50. Mafura, Matlodi, Luleka,
We
please
back.
just indicate. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. We had, I think there's another hand from Desiree. Desiree, yeah, we have noted your hand. Yes. Luleka, should we go back to the Q&A, or should we allow the colleagues to pose their question before we go back to the questions?
I think let's allow the colleagues, their hands have been raised for quite a
Okay.
while.
All right. In the order of Olumese, and then there was Jayaram. Okay. So I think let's start with the Olumese, and then we go Shirinda, and then we'll go Desiree, and then Machikwan. So yeah, so that will be the order. Let's start with Olumese.
Thank you. Just a question on the updates of the SASA when there is an update on the foreign RMP, such as the EU RMP. There are some updates that are usually just administrative, not impacting any of the requirements according to the guidelines, for example, benefit risk safety. Those kind of administrative updates, would that require an update of the SASA? Just to clarify.
No, Olumesa, they will not affect the update of the SASA. I think SASA it's more technical rather than administrative. So those details we don't need if it's administrative.
Thank you.
Shirinda, do you so?
Thank you. So I had posted those two questions already on the chat. so, so the first one is for the RMPs that I've already submitted, and then can these be updated at the time of the next variation? And then the second one is if a local specific South Africa RMP is drafted has opposed to the SASA, is it advised to follow the EU template? So those are the two.
I'll answer the second one, yes. That's why we stipulate that the acceptable format will be the EU format.
Okay, thank you.
I think this the first one you spoke to the amendments. Please repeat. Lou, I think this might be more for you.
Yeah. So for those RMP that had already been submitted, so can these updates be submitted on the next variation?
So for the RMPs that have been submitted, you are asking,
Yes. Yes.
can their updates?
These updates, can they be then submitted at the next with the next variation?
Yeah, depending on when the RMP was requested, you can.
Okay. I'm covered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Desiree.
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Apologies if this question has been raised before, but I've had issues with my technical issues, so I had to go offline for a bit. Just to clarify, if we're submitting an EU RMP, we submit the SASA with it together with a summary. So there would be the risk management plan from example EU, we would submit the SASA and we would submit a summary. Is that correct? Have I interpreted it correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree. Machukwana? Ms. Pasha, you can go ahead. We can see you are unmuted, but we can't hear. Let's hope your technical issues will be resolved. Let's go to Anastasia.
Hi, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Okay, I just have a couple of questions. The current RMP guideline has language relating to the global or the EU RMP. So my first question is will that language be the same in the updated version of the guideline? The second question I have is in terms of updates to the RMP, where will this be submitted to? Because for new chemical entities, as I understand, it will be submitted with the ECTD submissions. Post-reg, where will these, or who do we submit any type of update to the RMP to? And the question I have in terms of updates to RMPs, not all RMPs have additional risk minimization measures. So routine PV is required. So even with an updated RMP, it won't necessarily necessitate local actions. That's just the one thing. And then also the third question that I have is what is the difference between the summary because I'm not clear on what's actually needed in the summary, because the RMPs are quite clear in terms of what the risks identified are, as well as what actions, if any, will be implemented locally. So I think I'm just not clear on what exactly the summary is supposed to, the information it should include.
Okay, Kamusi, I'll start with the last one and hoping that maybe you got all others. And then you will reiterate. So the summary of the RMP, it speaks. I'm actually looking for the summary so that hopefully I can maybe share. So there's a document from EMA that specifically outlines the summaries of the RMP, and I think I made it very specific to say we align with the EU when it comes to the summary of the RMP. So in terms of the summary of the RMP, basically, it will provide the, I'm trying to figure out the specific term, but more of the background about the product. What is the product? What is used for? Something of that nature. We'll put an example in the guideline. And then from there, it will then talk to the safety concerns specifically, the potential risk, the missing information, but in a summarized format. And so is the identified, rather, important identified, potential risk, and the missing information. And then the summary of your risk minimization measures that needs to be put in place in response to the what has been identified. So that's basically it. It doesn't have a lot of things, and that's what we're going to publish so that we make aware other applicants of this particular molecule what safety concerns needs to be addressed, what other information it's missing, and then what is the potential important information. So I can literally share, if you allow me, Kamusi.
Yes, you can.
How it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, so there we go. Overview
Thanks.
of the disease epidemiology, summary of the benefit and efficacy, summary of the main safety concerns, identified potential and missing, and then summary of the risk minimization measure by safety concern, routine and additional any plan post-authorization, development plan, measure changes over time if you are at the post-reg site. So this is basically what you go into. It's literally about 2 page or something like that. And that's what we're going to publish.
Yeah.
Does this clarify your question?
It does. Thank you so much, Flora.
Okay. I think the second, was it the first one? It talks about the language, whether there will be an alignment between the SAHPRA requirements language and also the EU, right? Did I get it right?
No, so in the current SAHPRA guideline on RMPs, it states 4.4 states when existing global or EU RMP submitted together with the South African specific annexure. I just wanted to check because I know, Flora, in your presentation you've mentioned EU RMP and RR. Yeah, so I wanted to basically confirm the language as stated in 4.4. Is that going to stay the same, or are you amending that to state EU/RR F4 RRA?
It's an issue that we discussed yesterday, Kamusi.
Yes. Okay. Yes, on the guideline, I think when we were engaging and discussing internally, we have also observed and noted that the application that we're going to be receiving as SAHPRA may not necessarily be only those that come from the RRA. We'll have others, and I think that's why we had kept the global, because the global, for us, it's inclusive of applications that comes from other spaces or other countries, and that's the probably my submission, Flora, in attempting to address that. And as you highlighted, this is what we also discussed yesterday, so that we do not necessarily prescribe in terms of the application that we will be receiving as a regulator. I think that's my input. Yeah.
Yeah, right, Kamusi. But can I maybe request that we go and look at this, because there was a question earlier pertaining to this, and then we're specific to say it's gonna be the RRA's RMP. So maybe we just need to go and make sure that we align in terms of the terminology that we use, whether we go into accept RMPs coming anywhere from the world, despite the RA being an RRA or not. And then we will communicate that in the guideline to say, do we stick to global stroke EU, or do we stick to EU stroke RRA? So I think maybe allow us that opportunity. And then as we publish the guideline, we would have updated it and have considered any other issues that we need to consider in view of the formatting of other RRAs that will not be in line with what we have prescribed. So those are some of the issues that maybe we just need to go back and then iron them out. I hope that's acceptable.
That's perfect. Thanks. So just so I'm clear, when SAHPRA refers to a global RMP, the understanding is that it is an RMP that has been submitted to a foreign regulatory authority.
Yes.
That's the global definition. Okay,
yes.
And then the last question I have is, in terms of post-reg updates to the RMP, where do we submit those to?
Something, are you able to respond? But I think earlier on it was highlighted that all issues pertaining to RMP will be under the module 1.8. Let me allow something maybe to speak to that in terms of the amendment.
Yes, that's quite correct, Flora. So the updates would be submitted as a variation, but my understanding would be that it will be not a combined variation application. It will be a standalone update to the RMP. So it shouldn't be combined with any other variations. But yes, you may submit in a follow-up sequence. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Anastasia, can I ask, maybe, is that something that we need to reflect in the guideline in terms of the submission of the amendments? Where exactly should it go? Would it make it easier?
Yes, and I think just to raise, and I know someone else has also raised this, it was a question that was asked. PV, we don't, I'm from pharmacovigilance, we don't deal with the dossiers or the ECTD dossier applications or sessions or uploads at all. So it is a bit tricky in terms of the RMP being a safety PV function that is now having to be uploaded in an RA managed, it's different departments. So I think this is why the question it has been raised, and I've raised it as well, is it's now, we have to prepare this, give it to our RA colleagues, and they're going to ask the same questions. Where do they upload it, and how do we upload it? Because we don't have access to their systems. This now means, do we need to get access to the ECTD dossier SAHPRA portal and do our own submissions? So that's the reason why the question is coming up so frequently.
Okay, and I suppose Mafura, Luleke, you want to go? You want to proceed?
Yeah.
You can go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, because we discussed it offline with Santani, and I think from the discussions, we were saying that I think it would be best if you were to liaise with the RA department, because you don't want a situation where we are now finding parallel submissions because of the lack of communication from your end, from the PV unit. So it would be best to route to the person who's responsible for submitting this dossiers to SAHPRA.
And I think as well, Lou, to align with the international standards, this is how now these documents are being submitted. So if we choose to continue with this while we are introducing RIMS so that it can manage our document sequences, follow-ups, amendments, so it would not make sense then for PV to be receiving documents that are out of the system and not being recognized by the system. If Flora dies tomorrow, nobody can actually make a follow-up. So I think it's important that maybe we try to align from that point.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mafura. I see we have a hand from Sudesh. I think Machukwana, your hand is up again, but I don't know if you can now just say some. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Please go first, and before we go to Sudesh.
Okay, thank you for the session. My question is related to the additional risk minimization measures or materials. For example, let's say the product is already registered in the market, and the MAH implements the additional risk minimization measures, like maybe there's the patient cards or some information that we need to share with the HCPs. So this kind of materials, how will they be handled? Will they also be submitted via the ECTD? And should this accompany the RMP as well, or can we submit this as a standalone document? And also the subsequent question to that, should this, before we disseminate these materials to the HCPs or for them to share with the patients, etc., do we have to wait for SAHPRA to approve them before we can share with the HCPs? And how long will the approval process take? So I just need to understand, how do we handle those?
Mafura, do you want to respond to that? That's more about operational processes and how we're going to review and how the information is going to be packaged. Once they've submitted the information for SAHPRA's approval, when do they communicate? Do you wanna take that?
Maybe let's start with the submission of the risk minimization measures. I think we made it very clear that all of the RMP related materials will need to be under one place, and that's module 1.8. So colleagues, particularly Santani, maybe you may back me up on this to say the ARMMs are as a result of the outcomes of the review maybe of the RMP, and then the applicant will then need to submit them. So in order to ensure that they've been submitted and then routed to the correct place, then they will need to be under module 1.8. I think let's first clarify that one. Santani, am I correct? Santani, are you still on the call?
Sorry, Flora. I've got somebody in my office. Can you please repeat that question?
Okay, so the question is the risk minimization measures that comes with the RMP at the end of review of the RMP being approved for implementation, where should this be submitted? So my proposal is that they should be submitted under module 1.8. And I think this will be as a standalone document as well. So I just wanted confirmation from your side if we are aligned or we need to look at another place.
Yes, no, I agree with that. I think we're all in agreement that all the PV information should be in module 1.8. And are you saying will it be a closing sequence then that will come in to say that this has now been implemented, the RMP has been approved and implemented? Something like that.
So the risk minimization measure will come post the approval of the RMP.
Yeah.
Before it can be implemented. Then it needs to be reviewed, which is the second question. So
Okay.
when they submit for review, where should they submit it?
When you say where, is it where in the dossier?
Yes.
Okay, so 1.8 I think would be the ideal situation. But Flora, can we also then discuss it internally? Because if it's separate to the 1.82, do we need to expand the structure for the additional documents? Yeah, so I think let's apply our minds there and then we can then include it in the guideline as well.
Okay. So Mashiguan, in short, we will consider and then update on the guideline where to submit. Sasani, please take note of that. And I think the second question,
Thank you for that.
It was relating to the whether SAHPRA needs to approve the RMMs and then how long does it take? And I think you're asking this intentionally. So, in view of the changes that are okay, firstly, yes, we need to look at the RMMs and to ensure that they comply with all the safety related issues that we have highlighted, and then you are highlighting that quite clearly. So that's number one. I think I've answered that. But the second part that talks to the timelines in terms of the review, we are in the process of amending internal processes where we're looking at additional resources. So I know you're asking this because we've taken way more than enough time, according to you, in terms of the review of one of the things that have been submitted by the applicant. But then in so saying, we are trying by all means that we shorten the review timelines as much as possible. But due to the resource constraints that we currently are having, we end up going above board. So we apologize for that. However, we are working on a system that will improve. Our target is actually supposed to be done within 40 working days for any submission. But at this point in time, it's not honestly practical. However, we're working on that. So yeah, I will just leave it there. I know we're not complying to the 40 working days, but that's the target.
Thanks, Mafura. And then while I acknowledge that this is probably going to be something new for our stakeholders, and internally, what we'll try and do is we'll communicate. I think the submission requirements, so that those issues are clarified and where the information will be submitted and how it will be handled by the regulator, and of course we'll also communicate our own timelines, as Mafara has already highlighted that currently we're also looking at other issues that are related to resources. Having said that, I would want to also urge the colleagues that the questions that we ask should not necessarily be about the submission requirements, as we're still going to draft those documents and communicate or share with the colleagues, so that we clarify where and how those in the information should be submitted. And having said that, I have noted, I think Sudesh, I've also noted Prakesh and Ingrid, and then I think who else has dropped? I think Ingrid, you've lowered your hand. I think we'll have, I think, Mohammed, and then we will come to you, Ntiso, after these three colleagues, as we have also already afforded you an opportunity, if that's okay. Let's go with Sudesh.
Thank you so much, and good day to everyone online. My question refers to the section of the guideline 5.3.2. Sorry, I posted the question. I don't know if it was answered, but 5.3.2 states that any RMP review that becomes available at a later stage can be submitted as unsolicited information. Now, I just want to know, when we obviously monitor for this unsolicited information from the various health authorities worldwide, how long and how frequently do we have to submit this information to SAHPRA regarding if they have some new information on the RMP that they want and stuff like that? And is there a timeline that after so many days of becoming aware must we submit this, and for how long do we do this, please?
I think,
Okay.
Flora, do you want to go? But on the submission requirements, I think that's what I've clarified, Flora, that we will be drafting a communication and we'll send or communicate it, so that the process of submission and where that information should be submitted, we will try and clarify that on our communication.
Okay,
but Flora,
thanks.
you can
Okay,
take
but maybe let me address this one. It might be a bit different because it's not necessarily something that SAHPRA will monitor that you have submitted that, but like we say, it will add value in terms of reviewing the risk of the product. So as to how long and how soon, once you become available, we will include it in the document that Kamusi is talking about, just to ensure that we are aligned. And then the how long part, it depends on the registration by other regulatory authorities, because if then they're gonna be continuing approving and having this, you are aware of them, then you need to submit. But then if there's none happening anyway, except maybe the ones that you had prior to registration, that's all that you have. So it might be a very tricky one to be very specific and pedantic about it, but we'll see how to craft the response to the question.
Thanks so much, Flora. We're looking forward to that info. Yeah?
Thanks, Sudesh. Would say the Prakesh.
Good morning, everyone. So my question is more geared towards HPA and operations, especially when we do post-registration amendments. So currently, when we do our ECTD sequences, all of them are accompanied normally by a 1.0 cover letter application form, 1-to-1. But when we actually look at this, there's actually no space to tick off for pharmacovigilance, or if we are going to say that we're doing a specific sequence on its own for submitting a RMP plan. So are we going to be looking at amending the application form slightly? And also, what would we do with our 3 to R templates? Because currently for post-registrations, we normally submit the QIS. Would you also put in a space for that to say that is specifically for pharmacovigilance and RMPs?
Yeah. Santani.
Yes, so I think for the module 1.2.1, I don't think you would need to change anything there, but like was mentioned earlier, you'll be working together with your RA department to make sure that information is correct. But I think in this instance, for a submission of an RMP or an update to an RMP, your cover letter will be more important. So that when the evaluator is is given the sequence, they would know exactly what it is that they have to review.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. But as with regards to the 3.2, is it 3.2 with the QIS? I think we need to consult the quality team in that regard. Mahlodi, I'm not sure if you have any input on in that regard. Thank you.
Yeah, I think as you said, Santani, on the 32R, I think that we'll probably consult, and if there's a need for us to communicate, we'll do so. We'll note it from this meeting, Prakash. I think I've noted. I think we can go to Mohammed first, and then we go to Rodseth.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So my questions were very similar to, I think, Sudesh. But there was just one thing I wanted to find out. I'm not sure if it's been asked and answered before, but if our risk minimization is reviewed and rejected for any instance, would we get feedback on why it's rejected, or and whether we will get any suggestions as to how we may improve for resubmission?
So, Sudesh, coming to the review or evaluations of the risk minimization measures, we do provide a response in terms of where the challenges are, but not specifically saying how should you amend, unless, yeah, in certain specific cases, we do indicate that, but it's not something that we would normally highlight, but we do indicate the reasons for non-acceptance.
Okay, I think that is addressed. Thanks, Mohammed. And Rodseth?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. My question is very similar to one of the earlier questions. The earlier question focused on the foreign reviews and the submission of that. But my question is, in our company, so say you've submitted an RMP with an application for a new indication, so a type 2 variation clinical, and then when we enter the product life cycle, so after that indication has been approved, and now it's several months later, and then we receive an updated RMP from our parent company. So obviously we would then need to have a look at the changes to the RMP and update the SAHPRA. So what I'd like to know is, what is the time frame from us receiving an updated RMP from our parent company to needing to submit it to SAHPRA? We need to understand, for PSURs, if PSURs are submitted, there's a timeline within which you need to submit it. So how long would you give us to actually prepare the SAHPRA for those updated RMPs? So would it be 6 months, or would you put that in your guideline that you're finalizing?
Okay, so in terms of the SAHPRA, if I'm correct, if I'm understanding your question correctly, what you're indicating is if you're getting your RMP from your multinational counterpart and you need to submit to SAHPRA, how long should you submit your SAHPRA with? Or
No.
okay.
So the question is not. Obviously, I know that you have to submit the SAHPRA together with the RMP.
Yes.
My question is that after we've received the updated RMP from our parent company, what is SAHPRA's expectation in terms of how quickly we have to submit it to SAHPRA?
The updated SASA based on the updated RMP.
Yes, and submit both. Obviously, we'd submit the updated RMP together with the updated SASA. How much time do you give us to actually perform that submission? Is there a
We did
deadline?
not stipulate that. Sasani, please note that. But under normal circumstances, that the update is only to the SASA, so it shouldn't take you longer than 30 days. I think we will include 30 days. It will be reasonable, I think.
Well, it depends. It depends on the nature of the update to the RMP. It could need longer than 30 days.
But if the initial submission we gave you 90 days, then the update should be way less. So it can't be more than, it can't even reach 90 days. But we will see. But I think 30 days will be an acceptable timeline. But as you may be aware, we also have you also have opportunities where you request an extension and provide reasons why you're requesting extensions, and then we will take it from there whether we agree with your reasons or not. And don't send us the motivation 2 days before you're supposed to submit, and then we are forced to agree. So, but we will communicate that in the guideline.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. Hope I'll be able to pronounce. Is it Lith? Lith, and then we go to Makamu.
Thank you, Kamusi. Yes, it's Leaf. So I just had a question. If, for example, you had a new chemical entity, biological or other, and you didn't have South African data, so it was developed overseas, and you're bringing it in, and so it's your first submission. You've gotten, or whether it's from an SRA and you're submitting the parent RMP, and then us compiling an SASA, or whether it's from a non-SRA country and we're writing the full RMP. We wouldn't have South African data, so we could put in South African epidemiological data. So what is the recommendation regarding the South African data for that? Can we extrapolate from global data in terms of how we have developed our risk minimization measures and our pharmacovigilance plan, and give justification for why that is applicable to the South African population? Or is it a complete deal breaker that perhaps the clinical studies were not done in a South African population?
I think we addressed this earlier, Kamusi, to say that where then you are unable to get any South African data, you can use the extrapolation from other countries. However, you need to provide justification. Why did you use that? How does it then relate to the local population? All those things. So, and I indicated that we'll take that on a case-by-case situation.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you. I thought that was only with reference to the epidemiological data in that discussion. So that helps to know it's regarding the actual risk data as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Can we get Ingrid, and then we'll go in DSO and then Peace? Ingrid, hope this time you can. Yes. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation, all the clarifications. Apologies if this has been asked before, I missed it, but I just want to understand, when can we expect the updated guideline? And I know Mafora mentioned there won't be a grace period of a month for implementation, but that will just help us to plan from our side. If you can give us any guidance, please. Thank you.
Okay, I think Mafora have indicated that after this workshop, we will be publishing the guidelines, and once it's published, that's for implementation, right? I hope that what we communicated. Mafora can clarify
that.
Yes,
definitely.
Yes, okay. Let's get Shirinda, and then we go to Holumesi. Then these are the last two hands.
Yeah. Thank you again for the opportunity. I just have two more questions. So if you are submitting a SASA and the routine PV activities as per the EU RMP, do we then duplicate the EU RMP, or we just refer to it and note that we are aligned to the approach? That's number one. Number two, the data log point for the RMPs. So if the DLP is more than 6 months before sign off, do we add a statement to clarify the information has not changed?
So the statement that it hasn't changed, yes, it's you need to add. But the first question, I could not really get that clearly. Do you mind to repeat?
Okay. So now, if we are submitting SASA, right, and the routine PV activities as per the EU RMP, right? So do we then need to duplicate the EU RMP, or we can just maybe make a note that we align to the EU RMP?
So there's a table if you're submitting a SASA that will speak to the risk minimization measure or the routine PV activities. So if it's the same, on the table you'll write under EU or wherever the RMP is coming from, you'll write that. Under South Africa, you will also write that. And then it will just be aligned. There would not be a need for any justification. But then if there's differences on the very same table, there will be a third column speaking to the justification why the difference you are implementing this here and the other there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Olumese, you're the last one. You are the one between us and adjourning this meeting.
Thank you. Just two questions from my end. In respective of harmonization, we've made note of the concerns about submission via E2D. What I see with for other countries, right, the regulatory colleagues are the ones who perform the submissions of the RMPs with variations, as Maflora already said. So would there be a reference to this requirement in terms of cross-functional alignment in the guidelines requiring the local regulatory to submit? We would be responsible for, the local PV will be responsible for preparing, but wouldn't it be more harmonized to have some responsibility for submission from the regulatory colleague, so that there is that sense of cross-functional responsibility for the RMP submission? That's one question. The second question is, in respect of the implementation, once the final guideline is published, this would apply, just to clarify, that this would apply to all all products that are applicable according to the guideline going forward. That is new applications and updates. I know that it was clarified initially that for new applications, biologics are a must, but what about the other products? Would it be required that for every RMP going forward, it must be a South African RMP or a global RMP with South African annex?
Okay, Olumesa, I'm not sure
Matlodi?
if Kamusi or Matlodi is responding. Okay.
Yes, Matlodi. Matlodi, did you hear Olumese's question?
I think it was it was a long one, Mafura, if you can.
Okay.
Olumesa, can we go to the first question, then we answer that? So that I think your second question was a bit longish and I got lost in the as you're speaking. So let's start with the first one, and then I will respond and then move to the second one if you don't mind.
Sure. The first question was concerning the alignment with the local regulatory colleagues. And I was talking about harmonization, which you mentioned. What we see with other countries is that our local regulatory colleagues are the ones who handle the RMP submissions as variation. So I was asking, in the final guideline, would that be included, right? To have that sense of responsibility also there from the local regulatory colleague, instead of us being the ones to, push and follow up with them that, oh, they're meant to submit on our behalf. That's what I wanted to clarify there. in terms of harmonization?
Kamusi, I think everybody now we can respond to this one.
Yeah, I think so. I think they are asked, Mafura, is that if
No,
we are
understand the
expecting,
ask.
yeah, if can we include it in the guideline?
But is it upon the regulator to
It's
decide who must submit on behalf of the applicant or the HCR? That's the question that I have.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's a tricky one. I think I will say because the regulators in SAHPRA may not necessarily prescribe or who within the I think as the applicant who should be submitting these the risk management plan and update to the risk management plan, but yeah, I suppose, Mafura, this is a bit tricky because the regulator may not. I don't think we may prescribe to the applicant on how and who should submit, but they should find probably a mechanism on how they engage. Suppose if the applicant, if Luleka was an applicant, we should find a way how to deal or how to address the issues with the regulatory office within specific applicants or companies.
If I understand correctly, just to clarify, we were saying that the RMPs would now be submitted as a variation, correct? That was the understanding I got from the discussion so far?
Yes,
okay, yes, come.
Sorry, Mafura. Yes, I think we addressed there are two issues we're raising here. The RMP that comes with the new application for registration, and there's the RMP that comes as an update, right? That's the one we're referring to as a variation. Yes, that will come as a variation, and the expectation is that will be submitted using the CTD platform, and of course that will also inform the sequence that need to be prepared for submission. As we've highlighted that in terms of the submission requirements and the sequencing, that's what we're going to craft and communicate to the applicant in terms of the submission requirements.
Okay, I think that clarifies it then, because if we state that post registration, all RMPs should be submitted as a variation, we don't need to specify who within the MAH. Variations usually, depending on the setting in MAH, are usually handled by the RA. So the QPPV or the local PV will prepare the RMP and provide it to the RA to submit for as variation. So I think that's
I get it, Mafura. You're probably giving the PV colleagues from the other side additional activities.
No, but this should be stipulated in their SOPs as to how are they going to handle it. But we cannot necessarily dictate for them how to do it. But when we do GVP inspections, this is where it's going to be clear as to how are these being handled, and the relevant people that are involved then will be called in to be part of the inspection team. But RA is always part of the inspection team, so they can talk to any other issues pertaining to this.
Okay, thanks, Mafura, and then thanks, Olumese, for also giving that clarity. And of course, it also provides us an opportunity to really look beyond what we've crafted into our guideline. I'm going to take the last two.
No, she has a second question.
Second question.
Okay. Sorry, you can go ahead.
Yeah. So the second question was just that, given the implementation going forward, would it be the requirement that for every new application, the RMP must be a South African RMP or with a South African annex? Because I only heard that the requirement has been implemented for biologics only. So I just wanted to get that clarification.
So this is going to be like that moving forward. For any foreign RMP, it must be accompanied by an annexure. Although Matlodi did not confirm when we took into this, and then biological they have implemented already. So it's not only applicable to biologicals, but to all those products that I've highlighted regarding the new submissions. Either it's going to be SA specific RMP or an annexure to the foreign RMP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Flo, we are in alignment with what you just said.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Matlodi. I was hoping we're gonna have the last two hands, but we have got three more hands. Rutset, there's one that say SA Boardroom. I don't know what that is, and then the third one is non-dumiso.
I just wanted to make a comment from a regulatory person's perspective. If the submission of the RMP is going to be a sequence to the dossier, it's very clear to me that as the pharmacist responsible for the dossier and whose name appears in module 121, we have to make that submission. But of course, the drafting of the actual documents would be done by PV. So, I mean, we as RA, if it's a sequence to the dossier, we would automatically be doing those submissions, and we've been authorized by the company to be the conduit for communication in terms of the dossier. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thanks, Rutset. I think SAHPRA, I think Mafura, that's what Mafura was probably a bit hesitant to respond it because we didn't want to get on the operational issues. And thanks for clarifying that. Okay, let's get, I think it says SA Boardroom, but I don't know who that is. You can proceed, please.
Hi, thank you, Kamusi. It's Noktula from Hetro.
Okay.
No longer have a comment. I think Rodseth said exactly what I wanted to say, that if the RMP is sequenced, then it obviously is linked to the dossier, then that variation goes with regulatory. But if it comes as a separate document, which is strictly PV, then that was going to be a question that then do we have to include it in a variation as part of the dossier? Because if it goes separate on its own with its own sequence that's not linked to the primary dossier, then of course perhaps then applicants may look at PV submitting directly. So yeah, I think Rotsat sort of spoke my mind there as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Nokutula. Flora, you want to comment, or should we take the question from non-dumiso?
You know, when it comes to submissions and the sequences, Kamusi, you're taking to a very wrong person, honestly.
I know,
Sometimes you
but
should be advising. I think what SA Boardroom is highlighting as well, it's important to say, if it's a document on its own, do they need to submit it, or how do they submit it? But I think earlier on we indicated that all of them, they should go under 1.8, which is part of the documentation that we're going to put together so that we clarify in terms of where all these are going. But in terms of who handles it, please allow us not to enter into that space. But your SOPs will be very clear, and then GVP will talk to that.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thanks, Mafura. Non-dumiso, please proceed. Hope this time your technical issues are
Thank
resolved.
you.
Oh.
Yes. Thank you so much, Chair. It's non-dumiso on behalf of the Black Pharmaceutical Industry Association. I just want to ask you two quick questions. The first one is, will we see the RMP translated into the PIPIL and labeling requirements or evaluations or outcomes? And the second question is the incorporation of the E5, that's the ICH E5 document on acceptability of foreign data being considered in the SASA document? Thank you so much.
Okay,
so let's start with the second one, Dumiso. When we developed the SASA, we considered quite a number of documents, but I'm not sure if we considered the E5. So I'm happy for us to go and review in line with that, just to ensure the harmonization. So that's where I will put it. And the first one, please ask the first one. That I don't think it's very pertinent to me per se, it's for everyone.
I think it's more from Mahlodi. It's whether what the RMP has will translate into the PIL as
Yes.
well as labeling. Thank you so much.
Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but Mashori can take it. It's okay.
Thanks, Nondumiso, for the question. I think currently what we're doing at pre-reg as we evaluate the application, we do review the RMP during the pre-reg clinical assessments. So if there is information that needs to be related to the PIPIL, we do so. Hence, you would even see that sometimes you even have boxed warnings on some of the PIPILs, and also we even have alert cards. So these are the things that we try to also to bring in and bridge the gap between the RMP and the labeling. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, then thanks, Mhlori, thanks, Nondumiso. Let's get Makamu and Lawrence, and I'm hoping that's the last question, I suppose.
Yeah, so thanks, Mutoti. And you jumped me earlier on, so I never got to get this question through. My question relates to the, when I understood it correctly from the presentation, we say that in an instance where we are submitting the RMP, maybe the EU RMP and the SASA, and also the summary of the changes that would have made. Is it correct that you said you also, on the summary of changes document or annexure, would you also have a column where you are saying wherever there are changes, where you're justifying how this is applicable to our territory or to the South African sort of territory? Or you are saying in case or in instances whereby the minimize or maybe the measures are different, the minimization measures are not adopted as, or maybe we're not going to implement that locally, you should justify why these are not applicable. Am I understanding that correct? I just want some clarity on that. Thanks.
Okay, so I think we're speaking specifically to the SASA. So in the SASA, we have different sections where we need justifications on the differences between the two. So if, for instance, you are proposing to have a study in the EU and not in South Africa, then you will indicate that you're having a study on this. Where is it going to be based? Will there be any population included maybe in Africa, particularly in South Africa, or not? And then if not, then you justify why not? Why are South Africans not being included as part of this study? So those are the justifications that we will be requesting. But I think the SASA itself is quite clear to say justification on this, justification on that. So I hope I'm answering you, Lauren.
Okay.
Yes,
Lauren?
correct.
Thanks,
No,
Lawrence.
clear. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. Nondumiso, is that a legacy hand?
My apologies, Chair, it is.
Oh, thank you very much. I think my last comment would be that all the comments on the questions that you have posed on the questions and answers that we have addressed, that we have not addressed, this will also form part of the discussion that we're going to have post this workshop as we finalize our guidelines, and we'll take all those questions into considerations as we finalize our guidelines for publication and for implementation. And this will also form part of the communication that we'll share with yourself regarding the submissions requirements. And having said that, Mafura, I think we have exhausted all the queries that we have, and we have deliberated on these guidelines, and there's, I think, a way forward that has been paved, and there's clear understanding between ourselves and also our stakeholders in terms of the requirements. And having said that, From my side as the facilitator and the chairperson, I do not think there's anything further that we'll want to share on this platform, Mafura. Can I get the last remarks from your side as the presenter?
Okay. Thank you, Kamusi. Thank you, colleagues. So I have noted that in terms of the from the discussions rather, in terms of the timelines, there's actually a lot of questions that came that I don't think we necessarily thought of, and I think it's basically the reason why then there was a need for us to have this workshop so that we can have an understanding of maybe the challenges that we are not foreseeing as the regulator, but those that can actually come from you as the implementer of these guidelines. And as Kamusi has highlighted, we will definitely listen to this recording again so that we can ensure that we review all the questions and provide responses. And I hope once that has been done, then it will be an easy flow for both the regulator and the applicant to ensure compliance with regards to the requirements. But having said that, should there be any more concerns or challenges with regards to the implementation, we are at your doorstep. Please highlight so that we can see how we can be of assistance to ensure that everybody complies accordingly. Lastly, I want to thank you for taking your 3 hours and be with us. We really appreciate it, and you shall have a great day further.
Thank you, Flora, and I can only wish you a great day.
There's a hand, Kamusi.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's Cloud. Yes, I wanted to close. You can go ahead. Claudette, please go ahead.
Okay, maybe they've got issues with the mic. I think they can write in the
Not
chat.
that it's unmuted. Please go
Sorry,
ahead.
that was a mistake.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. And colleagues, again, I can only wish you a good day further. Thank you very much for making time to engage with us. Okay. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, colleagues. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.